So, Ginger,
Yeah?
you know how we wanted to start a podcast, but we were having trouble coming up with a topic?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my pitch. The topic of the podcast is us trying to come up with the topic for the podcast.
What? Like we pitch each other podcast ideas and that's the podcast?
Yeah, exactly. We could call it, What Should Our Podcast Be About?
Miles, that's really stupid. Let's do it.
What should this song be about? I'm trying to figure it out. What should this song be about? Could you perhaps help me out? I've had a moment of doubt. What should this song be about? Welcome to All Beans, the podcast where we talk about beans all the time.
Oh, is this what we're doing? Is this what we're doing this week?
No, not really. But maybe.
I didn't prepare any bean-related material.
That's okay. I've read 4 books about beans. Just beans in general.
I was wondering why you were in the bathroom so long.
That was from my research eating a lot of beans. Actually.
Oh, okay.
No, actually, welcome to What Should Our Podcast Be About? A podcast where we talk about what this podcast should be about. I'm Miles Grover.
And I'm Ginger Barrow.
All right. Do you want to get started today, or do you want me to go first?
Why don't you go first? I've got one. Yeah, you go first.
Okay. So my first idea, I was looking at the charts, podcast charts, as I often do. In my quest to figure out the perfect formula for a podcast. And I noticed that there were a number of podcasts where it's like a Bible podcast or a preacher podcast or whatever.
Okay.
And so I thought, well, what if we did something like that, but we took the Bible and we translated it in Google back and forth to a bunch of different languages and then back to English. Maybe that would be funny.
Okay. That could be a fun game. I'm not sure what the hook would be for an audio medium, but
yeah, well,
I'm sure you're going to tell me what you came up with.
Well, so I thought about that and I tried it out, and it turns out that because the Bible is has already been translated into lots of languages, you don't really get that many crazy changes.
Okay, all right.
From doing that. So I decided
Google Translate doesn't struggle with it at all.
A little bit. I mean, if you do it enough, a little bit, but it still comes out pretty close. And so that, and also plus I'm not actually a particularly big fan of the Bible.
Yeah.
So I thought,
I didn't know that about you.
So I thought, what if I do a different book that I am a fan of?
All right.
And so I decided to try it out with Moby Dick.
Okay.
Which Moby Dick is one of my favorite books. Read it 3 or 4 times. And so I just took the first paragraph.
Which is impressive, by the way. I have not been able to get through it once.
Yeah. Well,
it's a long book. It's a very long book.
It is a long book. A couple times I did it I listened to an audiobook. By the way, apologies if you hear a lot of creaky sounds. Rory is here. Our third co-host is here doing his thing over there, having fun, jumping up and down, making cute faces.
Yeah, he's a little bit noisier than he's been in the past, just because he has really embraced jumping. He
loves jumping, and also he's doing a lot of sounds today. So.
And you can hear his jumper is very squeaky.
It's a very squeaky jumper, yeah. But he's having fun, so hopefully I can edit most of this out, but we'll see. So apologies if you end up hearing a lot of squeaky sounds.
And apologies that you can't see him because it's adorable.
He is very, very cute. Okay, so I took the first... by the way, if you haven't read Moby Dick... I know it's a difficult thing to recommend because it is very long and parts of it can be a bit of a slog. But the first...
Yeah, lots of categorizing fish.
The first 100 pages or so are actually really easy to read, and the first paragraph is kind of a banger.
Yeah.
So I took the first paragraph.
It's deceptive, actually, because you get through the first 100 pages and then it gets difficult.
Yeah, it kind of does. But so the first paragraph I put into Google Translate. I translated it into a bunch of random languages and then eventually back into English. And I have 4 examples here of different times I did that because you get a different result depending on which languages you do, how many times you translate it, in what order, and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So I thought I would start. I'll read the actual thing from the book.
Okay.
The first paragraph, and then I thought we could trade off reading these ones.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think probably most people know the first 3 words of Moby Dick, and that's about it.
It's a very famous first line. So yeah, here's the first chapter. Chapter 1, Loomings. Call me Ishmael. Some years ago, never mind how long precisely, having little or no money in my purse, and nothing particular to interest me on the shore, I thought I would sail about a little and see the watery part of the world. It is a way I have of driving off the spleen and regulating the circulation. Whenever I find myself growing grim about the mouth, whenever it is a damp, drizzly November in my soul, whenever I find myself involuntarily pausing before coffin warehouses and bringing up the rear of every funeral I meet, and especially whenever my hypos get such an upper hand of me that it requires a strong moral principle to prevent me from deliberately stepping into the street and methodically knocking people's hats off, then I count it high time to get to sea as soon as I can. This is my substitute for pistol and ball. With a philosophical flourish, Cato throws himself upon his sword. I quietly take to the ship. There is nothing surprising in this. If they but knew it, almost all men in their degree, sometime or other, cherish very nearly the same feelings towards the ocean with me. So that's the first paragraph from the book.
And now we'll translate it for anyone who is still listening.
Hopefully you're still listening. So do you want to read one of these?
All right. I'll just start with the first one, I guess. Call me Ismail. And that's Ismail as in Ismail, as in you are male.
Right.
A few years ago, I had nothing in my pocket, little money, and didn't like the city. So I decided to swim and see the sea. This is one of my ways to cleanse my body and regulate my blood flow. Every time I drink, my face turns black. That's unfortunate.
Every time I drink, my face turns black. Yeah.
Samhain makes my heart water forever. I'm always amazed at the many key words on tombstones. It requires a strong sense of morality. I think it's time to run. ... I can't. Weapons and ammunition are stored here. Cato knew his way around and fought with his sword. I took a small plate. There is nothing. If I had known, many people would have been in my place.
Yeah.
So AI is not going to be taking over translation anytime soon, I don't think.
No, well, Google, yeah, at least not the way Google Translate does it. Yeah, I like that. This one I translated at some point, I believe, into either Irish or Scottish Gaelic. And so I think that's where Samhain came from.
Okay.
You know, Samhain, the holiday that Halloween is based on.
Right.
Yeah, Samhain makes my heart water forever. No idea. Okay, here's another one. Also says, call me Ismail. So I guess that's the version of Ishmael in some other languages.
All right.
A few years ago, I can't remember how long ago, when I had little or no money in my wallet and nothing on the beach to interest me, I decided to take a little walk and explore the water side of the world. This is a way to remove the spleen and regulate blood circulation.
No-cost spleenectomy.
Just walking around on the water, your spleen falls out. When I weep from my lips, whenever Samhain is damp and rainy in my soul, when I find myself standing involuntarily in front of the coffins and the funeral atmosphere of everyone I meet, and the hippo in particular gives me so many advantages that if it requires a strong moral code to keep me from going out and breaking people's polite hats, I think it's time to publish it soon. This is my backup gun and barrel. Cato flung himself on the sword with philosophical scope. I take it easy. There's no surprise. I want him to know that almost everyone thinks like me to some extent. Cato, I guess we want to know.
Cato.
This one also apparently went through Irish or Scottish Gaelic because we got Samhain again somehow.
Well, did it say Sunday in the original one anywhere? Because Samhain
No, it's
Saturday?
it's November. That must be for November.
Oh,
it's translating
okay.
November as Samhain, I guess.
Okay.
But it says whenever Samhain is damp and rainy in my soul. So, yeah. We got another one here. You want to read that?
All right. This one got Ishmael correct. Call me Ishmael. A few years ago, how accurate. With money in... I'm not saying how accurate.
No, yeah.
It says how accurate. With money in my wallet and not caring about the world,
So this time he does have money in his wallet.
I decided to think about the water part of the world. It is a way to drain the spleen and control the blood. So this time we're draining the spleen.
And we're not going to the sea, we're just thinking about the sea.
My face darkened each time. I often go in November when it rains a lot. But I live in front of all the shops and funerals. Especially since my blood sugar is low. I think it's best to go out in the sea as much as possible because there are strict moral rules, such as not going out and wearing a hat. Period. Period. This is my cannon and ball. In the forest, the philosopher Cato fell on his head with a sword. I calmly entered the boat. There is nothing strange here. If you know this, every educated person has felt the same once or twice.
Yeah, and then there was one that just went, I'm not sure what I did, but it just went off the rails and got really messed up. So it says the letter E, space, Kali, Ishmael 6 cars ago, dash, age Dudwa, whether or not I khotam, money in my pocket, took the mud in your pocket. Echini ha'a ka'a ka'in. No idea if I'm pronouncing these words, whatever language they're in, correctly at all.
Okay.
When I saw the water part of the world. Provides methods for splenic tagen and lactate radiation.
Ishmael should see a doctor, probably.
Yeah. De etra dream when I wake up and it's easy. When I am wet, no vuvru rain is on my forehead. No vuvru must be November in some language, I guess.
Yeah.
No vuvru rain is on my forehead. The Jews who squirm in the middle of the wall.
Well, that seems unnecessary.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from. The Jews who squirm in the middle of the wall, what have you passed before sarcophagus, and the Jewish people here? And when the hippopotamuses are in the middle of the night, and what kind of a prince is he who doesn't go to Rejolia and fold a haiku in Rejolalist? I thought at the time, CO as soon as possible. Pewter, this is a gun and ball. Cato threw a Samsane with the sword at Philo. Where'd Philo come from?
Well, this is nonsense.
Yeah. Cato threw a Samsane with a sword at Philo. Then I picked up the packages. Stone or not, period. You can see this sign, how thirsty I am. Right or wrong, I am the sea myself.
That did go off the rails quite a bit.
Yeah, I really don't know. I think maybe I just did it too many times and Google just gave up. But I don't know. I found those fun. I don't know if there's a podcast there, but it feels fun.
Yeah, I'm trying to think from a listener perspective if I would listen to that over and over again. And I feel like it's probably more fun if you're doing it than listening to it. I could be wrong, though.
Yeah, I mean, what if we did every paragraph? Like, what if we did a podcast where we read Moby Dick? Or we read whatever classic novel is, but we can start with Moby Dick. We read it a paragraph at a time, and each paragraph we've done this kind of thing to it. And so we just try to, or we don't read a paragraph at a time, but we do that paragraph at a time. And we, read the first chapter, but each paragraph has been translated differently a bunch of times and then back to English.
Yeah.
And just try to get through that whole thing. That could be a kind of a fun.
It could be fun.
It's almost like an audiobook, but bonkers.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It could be fun. I feel like it might get a little old after a while. I don't know. It's I feel like it's kind of you're really into doing Mad Libs when you first start out. And then, after about 25, 30 minutes, you're pretty tired of Mad Libs. You're like, all right, I got the joke, Mad Libs.
Yeah, I mean, that could be true. I think it could be interesting maybe because right now we've just done the same paragraph 5 times, whatever. And that definitely could get tedious. But if we were doing, the whole book, right, we could do a chapter and then have a discussion on the meaning of the chapter and
So a book club, But with bonus weird translations?
Yeah, it's like a Bizzaro World Book Club or something. I don't know. Actually, that could be a pretty good title.
Bizzaro Book Club.
Bizzaro World Book Club or Bizzaro Book Club or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I it could be because, especially if it's a book you have read, like seeing the difference between like what it means when you read what the author actually wrote and then what happens if you read it but you like basically skimmed it and English isn't your first language. Right? I don't know. It could be fun.
Yeah, it could be fun. I mean, if we're picking books like Moby Dick, like if we're doing a paragraph each like podcast, or I mean, if we're doing 4 or 5 paragraphs,
I think we could do like a chapter paragraph or a chapter of podcast.
A chapter podcast. I mean, how long did that take us just now to go through one paragraph?
Yeah, but like I said, we did that paragraph like 5 times.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't have to, and obviously we wouldn't have to explain the whole conceit. Well, we'd have to have some kind of explanation at the beginning, probably, but
Fair, but I think I still think it's going to take a really long time to get through an entire book.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the idea, or that's. Yeah. I mean, that gives us lots of content.
How many chapters are there in Moby Dick?
I want to say 50-ish, somewhere around there.
So you're talking about almost a year for one book.
Yeah, and then we switch books after that.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. The question I think is less how long does it take to get through the book, and more does this idea get tedious and boring? Would you actually keep listening, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you really wanted to listen to Moby Dick, maybe. Well, what if you're like, I'm not into this book. I'm going to wait till they go into the next book a year from now.
I mean, I guess that's the thing about this that's kind of maybe would work, which is even if you're not that into this book, the bonkers translations makes it a different book to some extent. And so, especially a book like Moby Dick, where there are chapters, I mean, there's a lot of it that's not really plot at all. It's all about like sort of esoteric philosophical things, and that could get really bonkers in translation, in whatever you call this. That's not really translation, but...
Okay, so problem I foresee.
Okay.
Moby Dick's probably in the public domain.
Yeah.
But we would have to only do books that are in the public domain. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. But there are a lot.
A lot.
I mean, if it's going to take a year...
if it's taking a year...
Yeah, a year for one book, which might even be conservative. There might be long chapters that we don't get through in one episode or whatever. And a lot of them are long, right? We could do Anna Karenina, another long-ass book that might be fun, right? And that one's already been translated from Russian, presumably by competent translators, but...
All right, well, being honest, I don't see myself committing to this idea.
Okay.
That's a lot of time and effort to devote to a really stupid thing.
That's podcasting, baby. All right. Well, I think there could be something there. Maybe.
But I think it was kind of fun. I don't know how we talk about this. If we pick this as our idea this week, unless you've prepared more, we'd probably have to go away and look some things up. And I don't know if us reading these things out is necessary. Like, I don't know if that's going to be good audio or not. I'm enjoying doing it, but I don't know if it's fun to listen to.
Yeah. That's fair. Maybe if we don't end up deciding we want to do this one, I can like go back and actually translate the whole first chapter, quote unquote translate, and bring it up next episode or something.
Yeah, I mean, you should do that anyway, even if you don't do it on the podcast.
Yeah, it might be fun.
Yeah.
I guess the other difficult thing is like picking when to stop, because each one of the reason I brought all 4 of those is because they each were funny in their own way.
Right.
Like each had a different weird funny thing. So
right.
I don't know. That could get. How do we pick the best weird translation? But
right.
Anyway. Okay, so...
Well, anything that mentions night hippos is a winner.
Yeah, I don't know if we could read it, though, if it's really that broken, right? Or maybe every once in a while.
But ideally, your translation has night hippos in there somewhere.
True. There was another one that mentioned hippos. I like the one that said, every time I drink, my face turns black. Because where did that... it came from, growing grim about the mouth, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
But
very strange.
Yeah. All right. Okay, well, do you want to talk about one of your ideas?
Yeah, so I don't know if I should start with, I guess I'll let you pick. I've got one funny idea and one more serious idea this week? Do you have a preference?
Start with your funny one, I guess. I don't know.
Okay. I mean, not funny, but more lighthearted than the other one.
We'll get to both of them, so whichever one you want to
Okay.
first.
So my more lighthearted idea is it's called Should It Exist?
Should it exist?
Should It Exist? And it's a podcast where we discuss various mythological creatures and we debate the pros and cons of them actually existing. So like dragons, for instance.
Right. Okay. So like we could approach that from different angles, right? Pros and cons for us as people, pros and cons for the creature itself. I feel like
society as a whole.
I feel like there are a number of like mythical creatures that like if they really existed, their existence might be pretty horrible for them.
like the phoenix, for instance.
Yeah, I mean it's dying all the time.
Yeah,
coming back,
dying and being reborn. Like, what if it doesn't want to be alive and it just has no choice?
Yeah, it can't end it. Or you know the what is it? It's called the Push Me Pull You from Dr. Dolittle. Do you know what that is?
No, oddly, as much as I love animals, I've actually never seen Dr. Dolittle.
Yeah, there's a movie, there's a book, or maybe a series of books.
I haven't read the book or seen the movie, and you would think I would have, but
yeah, because you're pretty into animals. Yeah, I don't actually know if I have either, but I know some of the stuff from it from stuff as a kid. So there's a thing called a Push Me Pull You, which is spelled in some way that is not just the English words, but it's supposed to sound like the English words. But it's like, oh, it's a foreign word, but it just happens to sound like that. Lol. Anyway, the front half is a llama.
Okay.
And the back half is also the front half of a llama.
Okay, so two heads.
So, but they're facing opposite ways. It's sort of like Cat Dog, if you remember that cartoon.
Yeah.
But two llamas, and they're I guess it's called the Push Me Pull You because if you walks one way, the other side might be trying to walk the other way, and then they're pushing and pulling each other or whatever.
Yeah, I gotcha. Okay.
But like when they eat, where does that go?
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Like, does that come out the other one's mouth if they both are eating at the same time?
Yeah, it's got to go somewhere because how does it poop otherwise?
Right. Like, how do its organs work? How does any of this work? Right. So
that's what you're saying when you mean that's what you mean when you're saying think about it from the creature's perspective.
Right. Like they could curse the day they were born if we made them real. Right.
Well, maybe, but I mean, some animals really enjoy eating poop.
Some animals do eat poop, that's true.
I mean, dogs seem to love to, like, dig cat poop out of litter boxes. Or at least some dogs.
Some dogs.
I had a dog once that liked to do that.
Yeah, I don't know what's up with that. Dogs, why are you doing that? But but yeah, I mean, I know that, like, elephants, for example, when they eat, like, some grass or whatever, it comes out, it's mostly still grass the first time they eat it, so they got to eat it again, like maybe a few times to get that really digested.
That's so much worse than than cows, because I know grass is like not you can't easily digest grass. Because the cows just vomit it up. Well,
yeah, they got their cud they chew. They also have like 4 stomachs or whatever. So
yeah,
like, they do most of it without pooping it out first.
Yeah.
My understanding is elephants. They got a different system where they got to eat it again.
but they're, I mean, maybe they're fine with it.
I mean, yeah, I mean,
they must be fine with it.
They must be.
Because you don't see elephants going,
yeah.
I can't.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I don't observe elephants that much. It's not impossible that they do that. But, yeah, I mean,
maybe elephants have been cursing their existence this entire time.
I mean, presumably elephants, have evolved such that they get pleasure from eating, even if it's like been pooped out the first couple times or whatever.
Yeah, evolution's weird because you would think that evolution would have come up with a better system, but this is the best they've got.
I mean, evolution is stupid. Like literally, it's like dumb luck, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
They just didn't happen to have an elephant with a better mutation than just eating it again, right? So
I mean, yeah, we know. Well, evolution is weird, yeah. Because again, I always come back to that lemur with the crazy long finger.
Right. Right. The eye or whatever.
I think, yeah. I mean, that's like something out of a nightmare.
That one's kind of nightmarish. Well, what about other mythical creatures like... so if dragons exist, does that mean that magic exists? Like, because even like it's hard to believe that a creature like that would actually be able to fly without magic. Typically, at least the way dragons are depicted, like, well, some of them, like the Chinese type dragons, don't even have wings, but I think they fly around.
Right.
But also, like, typically they don't, the way they're portrayed in like Western stuff, their wings are never really big enough that they could actually probably fly.
I mean, I think we have to leave magic out of it because otherwise that's too big a pro.
Right.
Right? Like, we all want magic to exist.
Right. Okay. Because I was going to say, like, if there's no magic, then, like, say we get unicorns, all of a sudden unicorns are just, like, kind of a weird
horse.
A weird horse or a goat type
weird
thing.
Stabby horse.
Yeah. It's like, there's probably been horses that had, like, a weird mutation where they grew a horn or something. Like, it's not impossible for that to already be a thing. You know, historically, the deep unicorn lore actually is that unicorns are sort of like half goat, half horse with a horn.
Okay, I didn't know that.
They have a goatee. They have goat hooves. They have goat tail. Right? They don't have. I mean, obviously, lots of depictions of unicorns. They're just a horse with a horn. But anyway, either way, they're just like, if there's no magic, if they're not like able to touch you with their horn and heal you or whatever, then they're just, they're just a rhino that looks a little different. Like, they're not that interesting.
Right.
And also the phoenix can't work without magic either, right? So,
well, it could just, I mean, we just accept that that's the way it's evolved. We just don't try to explain the science of it.
Right.
Which I know is going to kill you. But
well, in that case, then maybe we say the unicorn has healing powers with its horn that are just science-based instead of magic.
Yeah. And we don't have to have magic broadly exist.
Right. Or we could say whatever mythical creatures we're talking about, if they have some kind of magical element, we just say that comes as is, from lore.
It's
or whatever.
Their magic.
But it's not bringing magic in general to the world.
Right.
It might just be some kind of science we don't understand.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that idea has legs.
Okay. Yeah, that could be all right. That could be fun. Like, if we, I guess one problem might be that we might run out of mythical creatures. I mean, there's quite a few, but like, I don't know how many there are that we...
Well, so then maybe we move on to creatures that actually exist and discuss whether they should exist.
Okay, so we're like, should that
wasps.
Should wasps exist? Should that fish with lipstick that we talked about in the other episode, should that exist? Actually, yes, it should.
Yeah, I mean that one definitely should.
Or should vampire squids from hell exist?
Mosquitoes.
Right. Yeah, interestingly, I read a study. Well, I say I read a study. I read some articles about a study where some scientists did the math, I guess, and figured out that if we just completely eradicated mosquitoes, it actually wouldn't ruin the ecosystem or anything.
Yeah, but how do we eradicate mosquitoes? That's the problem.
Oh, there are people working on that, actually.
Really?
They have, like, I seem to recall some kind of, like, virus they have that, like, is basically like an STD or something, and
But for mosquitoes?
And they, like, release mosquitoes that have it out into the world, and they mate with other mosquitoes and die or something. I could be making up parts of that, but it's something like that, where they put some kind of disease in mosquitoes and release them to give it to the other mosquitoes.
I mean, that makes sense. That makes sense as a way to do it.
Yeah, and mosquitoes are actually one of the things that kills the most people in the world.
Yeah.
With malaria and stuff, so... That could actually be pretty cool. Although, of course, we don't know. Maybe that study's wrong and something horrible would happen if we got rid of them.
Yeah. But
anyway.
But they, on the face of it, they don't seem like they're contributing a lot of good to the world.
Right. And I guess if we're worried about, like, impact to the ecosystem, then the answer for every animal that already exists is yes, it should exist, and answer for every animal that doesn't exist is no, it shouldn't exist.
Right. So we have to not factor that in.
We can't really think about that. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's an idea. We might come back to that.
All right. What else you got?
My other idea that I had was, it's called joke theory.
Okay.
And the idea is that we take jokes, memes, comedy in general, and kind of be the people that ruin the joke by, like, analyzing it and talking about, like, what's funny about it.
Okay.
really breaking it down, which I know this idea sounds like more of a me idea than a you idea. I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely more in your arena than mine.
Yeah, I actually started a subreddit called Joke Theory a long time ago, where I would take basically I was like annoyed at some bad jokes and like wanted to explain why they were bad, and then I posted like 5 times and nobody else ever posted or looked at that subreddit. It's still there if anybody wants to look at it, but anyway.
Yeah, I don't know how you become big on Reddit in terms of like creating a subreddit.
Well, I would have had to do probably some amount of work to get the word out there,
and I didn't do that at all.
I didn't do any of that.
Yeah,
well, it's not a matter of wanting to or not. I just didn't do it.
You just didn't.
But anyway, like I like to take like comics, webcomics and stuff where it's like gets to the end and the punchline is nothing or terrible or not funny, and like take that and punch it up and make it actually funny. There's actually a subreddit for that as well called Comedy Necromancy.
Could that be a podcast where we take a joke and punch it up?
Well, that's what I mean. That could be part of it, right?
Right.
We could be like, well, here are all the reasons that this joke is the way it is, and it doesn't work. What if we did this?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, that could be fun.
It would be difficult to do with like comic strips because they're visual, obviously, and we know that reading comic strips on a podcast is not very entertaining.
Yes, if you didn't listen to that episode, we did briefly try that, and it did not work out.
But yeah, like,
do you have a joke? Do you have a joke example we could try right now?
Well, one easy example is like we could talk about. It's not necessarily to punch it up, but just talk about like why'd the chicken cross the road to get to the other side, right? Classic anti-joke, right? Because jokes typically. Well,
element of surprise.
Yeah, jokes typically try to subvert your expectations, surprise you somehow. And why did the chicken cross the road is an obvious joke setup. And so the subversion is that you think it's going to be a joke punchline, and it's not. Yep. And that could be funny.
I mean, should we try to punch up why did the chicken cross the road?
I feel like that's actually been done lots. I feel like that joke is old and people have tried it a million different ways. Yeah. I can't think of any other things right now, but I heard them as a kid.
I had a friend who came up with a pretty good anti-joke in a similar vein when I think she said she was like 6 or 7, but it was how does a monkey paint a house?
How?
With a ladder.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to think about because like that one's not really much different from why did the chicken cross the road?
Yeah. But
like so things lose their humor the more times you hear them. Like it can't subvert your expectations if you already know how it's gonna. Right, and even though that is a different joke, you're already aware of the format of the anti-joke, and so it has to go a little bit above and beyond as an anti-joke. I mean, there are still anti-jokes people make that work. I don't know why people hate their ants so much. Do you want to hear my favorite anti-joke?
Sure.
Okay. Did you hear that scientists figured out that ants never get sick?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because they have little antibodies.
Yeah. That's not really an anti-joke. That's more of just a silly, barely anything pun, I would say.
No, it's an anti-joke. It says anti in it.
So the idea that you were, to break that down, the idea that you were saying an anti-joke was itself actually a pun.
Right.
And I fell for it.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. Do you want to hear an anti-joke that has stuck in this is not a pun, an anti-joke that has for some reason stuck around in my head for like decades. Some friend told it to me a long time ago.
Yeah. Lay it on me.
What do you call the white part of bird poop?
Well, according to Rory, you call it what?
Why, that's bird poop too.
No, that's pretty good.
Right?
It's pretty good.
It's pretty dumb. Do you want to hear a joke that is one of my favorite actual jokes?
Yes.
It's a pun, I guess. Why is it really hard to explain puns to kleptomaniacs? No.
Why?
Because they take everything literally.
Oh, that's good. That's a good one.
Yeah, I always like that one. So anyway, I did try to think of, I thought about different titles this podcast could have. I was thinking about like the philosophy of jokes, or like, what if we get even more like, fancy sounding or pretentious sounding? It's like the ontology of japery or something. But I feel like joke theory
Rory doesn't like that one.
Yeah, I feel like joke theory has its kind of a punch to it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I like that title.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I thought it could be fun.
We could also call it something like joke ruiners or something, because people always talk about like
fun suckers.
Fun suckers. That could be a weird sex thing, maybe, but
well, could it?
I don't know. Yeah, so that's that idea. I don't know. I like it. I think it could be interesting. I don't know how funny it is. I don't know how fun it would be for us to talk about on this podcast either. So I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I thought that might be fun, but
Yeah. No, I think it could be fun. I mean, it could be funny. It could end up being definitely unfunny.
Yeah.
But I guess that's the point.
I mean, I guess...
Sort of.
I guess I was thinking that since every episode is about a joke or multiple jokes, there's got to be some comedy in there.
Right.
But we could also be dissecting, like, really bad jokes and stuff, so... But maybe that would be funny. We could have funny reactions to how bad the jokes are or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it matters if it's funny. I'm not sure if this podcast is particularly funny.
Yeah, it's not always funny, but hopefully it's amusing at least.
Yeah.
Let's break down what is funny about that.
And speaking of, the last idea that I had to bring up is not a particularly funny idea.
Okay.
But something that I thought could be interesting to talk about. I don't have a title for this one.
Okay.
But I was thinking, the idea of a podcast where because this is a podcast that I kind of wish would exist. It's a podcast where we talk about parenting things, but specifically taboo parenting subjects.
Okay.
So I feel like there are I'm learning as I go that there are a lot of topics that are very taboo, and people have a lot of opinions.
Yeah.
Moms especially other moms have very strong opinions. And I thought of this because I was in a group. I'm in a group online, and I saw a post.
It's Mumsnet, isn't it?
No, it's not. No, just a random Facebook parenting group. But there was a post the other day where the admins said that they had decided to not approve any posts featuring children in car seats. And that is because anytime somebody posts a picture of their child in a car seat, they immediately get all kinds of comments about proper car seat safety, and you're not doing this correctly, and you're not doing that correctly.
Okay.
People really have to like preface things with, I just took a picture in the car seat. They're not buckled in because I was just taking a picture. The car wasn't actually moved. They have to do a lot of disclaimers. And because the internet always wants to give an opinion, whether you ask for it or not.
So your idea is for us to make a angry parent magnet so that we can get roasted every time we do a podcast.
Well, I mean, sort of, I guess. The idea was to talk about taboo subjects and hopefully come at it in a way that we discuss all the angles of a thing and hopefully make some of these things less taboo.
Okay. Do you have examples so that we can...
Yeah.
So that we can attract some angry parents to this podcast right now?
Yeah, well, what I'm going to say is probably going to attract some angry parents because I've already experienced a little bit of online judgment for this in the form of angry emojis. But bed sharing is a very big one. Co-sleeping / bed sharing.
Yeah.
And we do bed share. It is possible to do it safely, but that is something that you have to approach very carefully, especially in the US. And I've learned that it's different in other countries than it is here. But we are all about, independence. And so anything that makes your child more dependent on you tends to be frowned on. But also there's just a lot of stuff that's lumped into one category as like infant deaths in terms of bed sharing.
Right.
That is actually not completely accurate because they lump in all of the things into one category,
Yeah, I've definitely been on threads online where people are pretty nasty to people who talk about bed sharing or like as if you're murdering your baby.
Which I think is really harmful because what happens is a lot of the deaths happen because of accidental bed sharing. Meaning you're just so tired
that you fall asleep.
Yeah. And I think there's something to the idea of accepting that people are going to do this and teaching them to do it safely.
Yeah.
And I think that is a big part of the problem, I guess, from my point of view. I think that if you create an environment where people don't feel like they can tell people that they're doing a thing, then you create an environment where they're not getting advice on how to do it safely. They're not having conversations about, like, are you doing X, Y, and Z?
Yeah. So. I appreciate that you want to spread that kind of information. I absolutely do not want to do a podcast like that. Like, I avoid talking about that stuff because it's like, I don't need people to be yelling at me that I'm murdering my baby or whatever.
Right.
Like, we do what we do and do it as well as we can, like everybody does. And like people online get really shitty about, like, if you like the wrong manga or something.
Right.
So much worse when there's like actually something on the line as far as, like, you know, safety of a baby. So I don't want to be anywhere near that.
Yeah. Well, this is my point, actually, is that there is so much shaming and judgment. Like, when you become a parent, especially as mom, like, you experience a lot of judgment no matter what you do.
Yeah.
And I think it would be cool to lessen that a little bit.
Yeah.
However, I do realize it would be asking you to throw yourself into the fire, and it's not a particularly fun or funny idea.
Yeah.
So I did say that I had a funny idea and a serious idea. This was my more serious one.
I don't think it's a bad idea for a podcast. It's not a podcast I would want to do, but it would not only be a good thing to do, but it'd probably be controversial and therefore get some engagement online. And your metrics would probably be good or whatever.
And like I said, this is a podcast that I kind of just wish existed.
Right.
I would certainly appreciate listening to something like that. I think there should be more things out there that are like, hey, you're doing a good job, and, you know, let's discuss these things without any judgment and not yell at people for taking photos of their children in car seats and posting them online.
You know, I wouldn't be surprised if something like that does actually exist somewhere.
Yeah. Maybe I should do some looking.
Yeah, there are lots of parenting podcasts. It also reminds me of a different idea for a parenting-based podcast that I sort of had, I think yesterday, when Rory stuck his finger in your nose and gave you a bloody nose by, like, slicing your nostril open.
That was a delight. Yeah. We woke up from having a little nap together, and he reached for my face and hooked his finger inside my left nostril.
Bloody nose. And you said something like, baby 1, mom 0.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking that would actually be a pretty good title for a podcast, baby 1, mom 0. And it could be like keeping score. Like every time your baby, like, gives you a bloody nose or gives you a bruise from kicking in the face or, like, manages to get poop on something or whatever.
Or interrupts your podcast.
The baby gets a point, but you get a point every time you dress the baby in a really cute outfit and take a picture, or, I don't know, like...
Yeah, that could be fun.
Get joy just from looking at his face or whatever.
I do think that is a podcast that we will enjoy making more than people will enjoy listening to.
Yeah, I mean...
Because it's very much like, let me talk about my baby.
Yeah, it's definitely a parenting baby podcast, but I feel like there's a market for that. And it's sort of a fun way to frame it, right? Like, we're up to episode 50, and now the score is... You know, baby 200, mom 150, or I don't know, whatever.
Right. Maybe people could, like...
Mom is going to be losing.
Maybe people could, like...
Just to be clear.
Maybe people could, like, call in and give their cute baby stories. I mean, actually, don't call in.
Probably email or
don't call me. Don't ever call me.
Don't call. Message us or whatever. But yeah.
If you're calling me, how did you get this number?
Also, how did you know we were recording?
How did you know we were recording? Why are you making me use my phone as a phone?
How did you know what we were saying and be able to respond to it by calling in? Yeah.
Don't ever call me.
Very, very rude.
That applies to everyone, by the way, not just... our listeners, any of my friends out there that are listening, don't call me.
Yeah, unless it's an emergency. And that's what I assume when I ever get a call from somebody, that there's some kind of emergency. Yeah. Or like it's somebody from the bank or whatever.
Otherwise, why didn't you just text me?
Right. Yeah, I don't know. That could be a fun idea.
Yeah.
We're getting pretty far into our recording here. What do we... All
right, so what are the ideas we've got?
We've got baby 1, mom 0... We've got the one that doesn't have a title, the
Book translation.
the book translation one, but also the Angry Parent Magnet one.
Angry Parent Magnet.
We've got the joke theory one.
Joke theory.
And then Should It Exist.
Is there anything that jumps out at you that you particularly want to talk more about?
I think my favorite has been the translation one, but I don't know that there's that much to talk about.
Right.
I got the impression that you were wanting to talk more about the Should It Exist one, maybe?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you don't want to talk more about babies and parenting stuff, which again would be pretty heavy.
Yeah.
So I think that could be a fun one to delve into a little bit more. Talk about some mythical creatures and discuss whether or not they should exist. I think that's something we could do right now pretty easily.
My first note, I guess I would say, is maybe we should consider the title, because I'm finding it, both of us, when we say it, should it exist, the should it exist gets kind of garbled in the mouth. So it's a little bit difficult to say, surprisingly. So,
yes.
I don't know.
So, I mean, I'm fine with reworking the title. I spent about 0.5 seconds coming up with that title, so...
Yeah. It's like, I don't know, maybe something with mythical, or...
Yeah, we could workshop the title a little bit more. Do we want to do that now, or do we want to maybe kind of talk it through? Maybe we'll come up with a title.
Yeah, let's talk about some animals or whatever. Yeah, what's your favorite mythical animal? Maybe.
Oh, my favorite. Kind of putting me on the spot here.
Okay, well, how about just what's another one to talk about?
Well, we haven't really discussed the pros and cons of any of these.
Okay.
So we could pick one.
Should we start with unicorns?
Unicorns. Let's start with unicorns.
Well, unicorns are definitely my favorite mythical animal, so I'm already pretty on the pro, yes, it should exist camp, but...
Are there any cons?
Let's see. You know what could be kind of fun is, what if we look at like the D&D entry for these creatures?
All right.
You
want to pull up the D&D entry for unicorns? All right.
Okay.
Maybe don't read through the whole thing. So you've pulled up the D&D.
Yeah, so I've got the unicorn stat block here, which is kind of like the overview of all their stuff.
So maybe kind of just highlight some of the...
They're immune to poison. They're immune to being charmed, paralyzed, or poisoned. They have dark vision out to 60 feet and a passive perception of 13.
Should we make sure that people who don't play D&D know what dark vision is?
Dark vision is the ability to see in complete darkness, but it's like black and white, and you don't see color, and that's what black and white means. And it's not as good as regular vision, but it's obviously better than not seeing.
It's like night vision, basically.
Basically like night vision, yeah. They have a charge attack. They have spell casting. They can cast the following spells: Detect Evil and Good, Druidcraft, Pass Without Trace, Calm Emotion, Dispel Evil and Good, and Entangle. It's got its horn counts as a magical weapon. It's got hooves as a weapon. Actually, I think all of these count as magical weapons because they're magical. It's got a healing touch. Unicorn touches another creature with its horn. The target magically regains 11 hit points.
So in our world, are we saying
and it can teleport once per day.
Okay. So in our world, are we saying that unicorns can teleport and heal people?
Oh, they also have a shimmering shield and can heal themselves. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. It's as good a version as any, I guess.
All right. So we're saying they can teleport and heal themselves and other people.
Yep. They're also lawful good, celestial beings.
Well, are we going to say that all unicorns, if the unicorns exist, they're all lawful good?
Yeah, well, these are also...
I ask you because a con I could see is... I mean, horses are already pretty dangerous if they get angry.
Yeah.
Because they're much bigger than we are and weigh a lot more.
Yeah.
But a horse with a horn, a stabby horse that gets angry.
A stabby horse.
The
other word for unicorn.
The other word for unicorn is far more dangerous than regular angry horse.
Well, lawful good doesn't necessarily mean that they wouldn't just kill you if they perceived you doing something that they thought was bad.
Yeah, they're like, you're smoking weed and that's not legal in this state, so...
Yeah, morality is a lot more concrete in D&D, so yeah, maybe we don't even bother with the morality part.
Yeah.
They tend to be good, let's say, but there could be evil ones.
They're animals, right?
Well,
they're going to do what animals do.
They're not really, at least in this format, because they have average human intelligence and pretty high wisdom, actually.
Okay, wait. So if they've got human intelligence, then I think that opens up a whole other, like, that there could be a lot more cons if they've got human intelligence.
That's true, because now we are sharing the world with another sentient creature, which we've never... Or sentient, sapient, whatever you want to say. Another creature like us, which doesn't really exist in the current world.
Right. Yeah, so are we going to say, do we want to say that they actually do have human intelligence? Or no, because that's gonna change our discussion quite a bit, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, the unicorns of most media, I feel like, are actually pretty intelligent. Certainly, like, My Little Pony unicorns can speak and are intelligent. The unicorn in The Last Unicorn, I feel like, talks, doesn't she?
Yes. Well, the unicorn in The Last Unicorn.
Or maybe she speaks in your mind or something.
Yeah. But she's certainly intelligent. Yeah. So I guess I'm not trying to sway you one way or the other. I think we just need to decide for the purposes of this discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I would say canonically there's no answer, so we just would have to pick.
Yeah.
But a lot of unicorns in stories are intelligent.
Okay.
Maybe we say they're at least as intelligent as, like, apes or something.
Okay, that's reasonable. Okay, so then, I mean, they could get angry and stab you.
Yeah.
Stab you or stab you.
Yeah, I guess the question of intelligence is whether they would be morally culpable for doing that or not.
Yeah, I mean, well...
Because a rhino can get mad and stab you with its horn, but it's just a rhino. It doesn't have intelligence.
Yeah, I mean, apes are intelligent.
Yeah.
But if an ape attacks a human, we've seen what happens.
Yeah, and I think that the question of moral culpability around, like, are apes moral agents? I think people would generally say no, but it's maybe a little bit of a gray area. Like, either way, they tend to get put down, executed, I guess, if they hurt people. Yeah,
so I guess it would be the same thing with unicorns. So it's not more of a con than any other animal, really. I suppose, yeah. Rich people would probably exploit them.
Yeah, which is going to be the case with literally any mythical creature we talk about.
Yeah. I could see there being some pros for the medical community, right? If unicorns can heal you.
Yeah, if they actually have, like, magic level healing, even if we don't have magic.
Every ER just has a unicorn on call.
You come in with, like, a gunshot wound, you just poke the unicorn horn there. As long as
Get him to the unicorn OR stat.
As long as the unicorn horns don't work without being attached to the unicorn, because if that happens, they're getting farmed and harvested for their horns.
Yeah.
And that's kind of horrible.
Okay, yeah, so we got to say, if we're creating this world, that we're saying that's not a thing. Otherwise, that's a big con.
Yeah, I'm seeing kind of a problem with this concept, which is that the reason that we know about mythical creatures which don't exist is because people thought they were cool enough to talk about and tell stories about, and therefore, like, kind of want them to exist already.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, sure, goblins or, I don't know, bugbears or owlbears or various types of, I don't know, beholders or something. There's lots of bad, nasty mythical creatures, but, like, the big ones are mostly stuff that, like,
right, but maybe it gets more
want to exist.
Maybe it gets more fun when we get through all the big ones and get to the more obscure ones.
Yeah.
Like owlbears.
Would we count stuff like fairies and fae people or whatever as mythical creatures that...
Yes, and big con, they might steal your baby.
They might replace your baby with a changeling.
Right.
All right, well, I think... do you have more you want to talk about this? I feel like we're kind of winding down. It doesn't feel like it has the most legs to me. It's kind of interesting, but...
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mean, I think it was worth talking about just because I'm going to keep the unicorn OR in my head for, like, a good long while. Yeah. I like that idea. Like, that right there was enough for me to want unicorns to exist.
They'd probably just call it the UR.
The UR.
Right? The UR. You gotta take them to the UR, stat.
To the unicorn room. Yeah.
Should we try to come up with a better title, or should it exist? Okay.
Yeah, you're right. When you do say it quickly, it just sounds kind of hard, like you're drunk or something. Yeah.
Is mythical maybe something in the title, like mythical to real, or mythic real?
No.
That's nothing.
What if it was should they exist?
Should they exist? That's better. That's definitely better. Should they exist? Or I feel like there could be something better, but should they exist is at least not as hard to say as should they exist.
Yeah. I mean, we could probably come up with something better if we brainstormed for a while, but I don't know if it's worth it.
Yeah.
Should they exist is fine.
Should they exist?
It's fine. The podcast idea is fine. It was kind of fun to talk about.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll probably pursue it further.
Let's go back to the beans idea.
I mean, I'm always willing to talk about beans.
That's the fallback.
Yeah. That could be like our parachute pull.
That's our ripcord.
Our ripcord. Would beans help?
Yeah.
Would adding beans help?
What would happen if you dumped a bunch of beans on a unicorn? Would unicorns like beans?
Would unicorns like beans? What would a unicorn's favorite bean
What do
be?
unicorns eat? Do they just eat like oats? Whatever horses eat?
I guess magic oats.
Are they
Lucky Charms?
Oh, I thought you said magic goats, and I was like, yeah, they kind of are like magic goats.
Lucky Charms.
They eat Lucky Charms. They actually only eat Lucky
They
Charms.
only eat Lucky Charms.
That makes sense, actually.
Yep.
So
because they are magically delicious.
So unicorns would come and take all my Lucky Charms.
Right. All of them.
That's the first con.
That is where the real fight would happen. Humans versus unicorns, the battle for the Lucky Charms.
Battle for Lucky Charms.
I mean, I want to watch that movie.
I feel like the unicorns are going to win, especially if they're these...
Right, because they're big stabby horses.
Teleporting, intelligent...
Okay, but
can cast spells.
Okay, but I love the idea of a unicorn just like teleporting into your kitchen, taking the Lucky Charms and going.
You just like walk out in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and there's just like a unicorn with its head up in the cupboard, like munching on your...
It's just like speared your box of Lucky Charms.
They're just like falling into its mouth.
Is that a pro or a con?
I don't actually know. I feel like there's something... I feel like maybe there's more to this idea of like, rather than should it exist in a really general sense, like, should it be able to come into my house? Would I want it in my house?
Oh, okay. That could be a fun podcast.
Would I want it in my house?
We should put a pin in that. I mean, because I don't want a dragon in my
Is that this
house.
podcast?
Is that this podcast?
Is it should it exist? Should they exist? Or would I want it in my house?
Would I want it in my house?
Would I want them in my house?
Would I want them in my house?
No, I think it's better in that case. Would I want it in my house?
Would I want it in my house? Yeah. No, I like that.
I mean, do you
want to talk? Are you saying you want to talk more about that? We've already been recording for a while.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, is that the podcast we're already talking about? Actually, well,
if they eat Lucky Charms, I mean, the Lucky Charms kind of led to that.
Yeah, so I think rather than should they exist, maybe a more fun thing to talk about with this topic is what are problems that would happen.
Right. Well, we've discovered one.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm saying like maybe it's a podcast where we talk about different mythical creatures and like the problems rather than just like pros and cons. Or, like,
okay, that could be
like,
fun.
And would I want it in my house could still kind of work as that title, right? Like,
yeah.
No, we don't want the unicorns in our house because they're a big friggin' horse and they're gonna eat all our Lucky Charms
and poop on the kitchen floor
and poop on stuff and scare the cats.
I just love that image though. I'm just picturing you in your bathrobe just walking into the kitchen in the middle of the night and there's just a unicorn there.
Yeah, except I don't wear a bathrobe typically. So I walked out naked and there's a unicorn which I guess is also naked.
And that's going to be awkward for both of you.
It's awkward for everyone. And who's going to clean up the poop and all the... Of course, the unicorn poop might be like frosting or something. So it might not be that bad to clean up.
Ew.
What do you mean? I mean, that's better than regular poop.
I don't want that to be where frosting comes from.
I'm not saying that's where... Okay, maybe that is where frosting comes from in this situation. All right, well, I think we got to kind of a fun place with that.
Yeah.
Should we wrap it up there?
Yeah. So follow us on social media. If you like this podcast, leave us a review. You can find all of our social media links at coolpodcast.website. We're on Twitter and Instagram. at whatshouldpod. And you can email us at coolpodcast.website.
And I'd say even more important than leaving us a review or liking us is sending us ideas. Send us your ideas for, like dumb, bad, funny, even good ideas if you want. Ideas for podcasts, and we might discuss them here.
I wouldn't say more important, equally important.
Sure, equally important. Well, it's content. If you do send us ideas, let us know how you want to be credited, because we'll say your name.
Yep, we'll give you a shout out.
And
thank you for the awesome idea.
Yeah. And also, we said this last time, but if anybody listens to this podcast and likes one of the ideas and wants to take it and make their own podcast, do it. Go for it.
Tell us about it.
Tell us about it. We'll also shout that out. Maybe we'll become podcast friends after that or something. I don't know.
Podcast pals.
Podcast pals. Pod pals.
Pod pals.
And yeah, thanks for listening. Thank you to Rory for mostly being reasonably chill and not making too much noise. He made a lot of noise, but hopefully not too much. Oh, and now he's eating my finger.
He has a lot of strong opinions.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. Cool podcast.
That website. Cool podcast, bro.
Yeah, so
we'll see you next time.
Bye. Bye.
What was that podcast about? I'm trying to figure it out. What was that podcast about? Could you perhaps help me out? I got stuck under the couch. Didn't catch what that was about.